Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Andrea Watson, and I'm the Communications Supervisor at Tualatin Valley Water District. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you our CEO, Tom Hickman. Tom joined the TVWD team on August 1st, 2019. He was drawn to the opportunity at TVWD, in part at least, due to the future-focused reputation that TVWD holds in the regional water industry. The investment in the additional water supply system that's seismically resilient is an example of how several regional water providers have joined together to deliver quality drinking water now and for generations to come. It's my pleasure to introduce Tom Hickman, professional engineer.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome to today's customer forum on the Willamette Water Supply Program. Your time in learning more about your water system is appreciated. You are currently investing in an additional water supply. It is through you, our customers, that we, the TVW staff, have the authority to operate, treat, and deliver your drinking water. You pay for the system. In fact, you are the only investor, and most of our customers never see any of the infrastructure because it is underground, secured, and rarely exposed. Events like the one today are designed to bring you closer to show you what it is that you are investing in and how it all works. And I want to thank you for your time and interest in this. The Willamette Water Supply System is a significant investment, and you may have noticed that in your rising, water utility bill. This didn't just happen suddenly. It happened over many decades of water resource, financial, and construction planning. These are not singular decisions, and rather a series of decisions that incrementally moves an investment forward long before any construction begins. You will hear from our program director for the Willamette Water Supply Program a little later, and you will see the many ways that they work to plan and manage the project and the costs. A reliable water supply is foundational, not only to each of us individually, it is foundational for an economy. Having a reliable, secure, and safe water supply is critical to business, health, and safety. Water is a critical component in quality of life, health, and fire protection, and the economic development of a region. Each of us benefit by the many that came before us that made tough decisions to invest in our water systems that we all enjoy today. Each generation makes these investments for future generations to rely on, and TVWD is in the midst of a truly multi-generational investment project in the Willamette Water Supply Program. As you can imagine, the primary driver of our water rates is currently the long-term capital investments, including this project. Currently, TVWD, along with the City of Hillsborough and the City of Beaverton, are investing in this $1.3 billion project. Although planning started decades ago and construction started years ago, we are currently far enough through the construction process and financial investment that the completion date of 2026 is coming to view. During the life of this project, it is estimated that the project will generate more than 4,000 jobs for the region. Of course, one of the big surprises delivered in 2020 has been COVID-19, and that has and is going to continue to put pressure on us at the individual, household, and community level. The benefit of having partners in a project this size is a shared risk, and we are working closely with the City of Hillsborough and the City of Beaverton to respond to the challenges COVID-19 has presented. In large part, COVID-19 has really impacted our water sales and thereby our revenues. So while we've had a lot of benefits in the re-executed WIFIA loan, the reduction in revenues as a result of COVID-19 has and continues to be problematic and an unforeseen situation that I don't believe any of us could have envisioned. The board of directors and the staff take their jobs very seriously, including our fiduciary responsibility of spending public dollars. We recognize that the events which stacked up since last March have laced significant strain on our economy and have put many of our customers in a very difficult financial situation. We have taken many actions to reduce our expenditures at the district while preserving our ability to move forward with projects that put us in a strong position in the recovery. To date, we have reduced our expenditures in this budget cycle by approximately $10 million. All of the leadership and board of commissioners is working to reprioritize our investments in the district's budget. These cuts have largely been achieved by postponing projects. These are not projects we can ignore forever, nor do we want to wait till system failure to address them, but they are projects we can stretch out to reduce financial impacts to our customers. We continue to look for cost-saving measures across the district while still maintaining our ability to deliver a safe and reliable water supply to our customers. We have also worked closely with our surrounding partners in the industry, along with our professional industry, to work with Congress to get dollars to lessen the impact to our customers. Our staff and other regional staff began working with Senator Merkley's office back in 2011 to develop support and ultimately the passage of the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, otherwise known as WIFIA. This bill has allowed us and our partners to secure more than $680 million in low interest loans. We worked with our congressional delegation and the EPA to re-execute that loan, closing to further reduce the interest rate and the cost to our customers. An investment of this size requires financing, and these loans will be repaid over the 35 years once the project is substantially completed. It's important to note that while these very low interest loan rates are fantastic, they help us in the future years. As we begin to pay off these loans, that's when we really see the benefit of the low interest rate. We have also worked with our region's elected officials to help secure emergency funds for our customers who are being impacted as a result of COVID. Washington County generously allocated funds from the CARES Act passed by Congress. Almost 400 customers from TVWD received assistance totaling over $225,000. This made a dent in the accumulating water utility bills that our customers that they haven't paid since COVID-19 started last year. Currently, about 1,800 customers owe $768,000 on their water and sewer bills. We recognize these are difficult and uncertain times for everyone. We are doing all we can to ensure we can continue to deliver water to all of our customers at the lowest possible cost. While no one is excited about the need to do rate increases, it needs to be understood that the increase is needed to pay for the Willamette water supply program that we can't stop due to numerous contractual commitments made long before COVID-19 hit us the way it has. The Willamette water supply project remains and will remain for several years to come the biggest ongoing cost the district faces. And while it is never popular to raise rates in any industry, it is important to maintain perspective that this natural resource is being delivered to your residences and businesses 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at a cost of about 1 1/4 penny per gallon. There is no other natural resource delivered to any of us at such a low cost. At this point, I'm going to turn this presentation over to professional engineer David Kraska, who is our project director for the Willamette Water Supply Program. David brings decades of experience and a wealth of knowledge that is needed to successfully deliver this large investment for the district and for the region and its partners. Take it away, David.
Thank you, Tom. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your time and attendance today. So my presentation for you all is basically a high-level summary of the kind of the background of the program and a few key topics. And then I'll introduce our construction manager of all the work that's going on out there in the field right now, Andre Tolman. So next slide, please. So years ago, as Tom alluded to, the decision was made to go to the Willamette, and this formal decision was made, I believe, in 2013, with work started on that project back in around 2011. And TVWD selected the Willamette River after a multi-year technical study with public input. And you can see on this graphic here on the right-hand side all the options that were considered. The TVWD service area is in the center of that graphic. And the options that were considered were increasing storage at Hag Lake, and so that's the Joint Water Commission supply. So it would basically be increasing supply from that source. Moving around to the north, building a new water source by groundwater wells, kind of up in the Sauvie Island area, or out to the east, purchasing additional water from Portland, or down to the south, the Mid-Willamette River. And through this detailed analysis, and again with the technical study and the public input, the Mid-Willamette River was the option that was selected for the reasons located on the lower left-hand side here. Lower rate or lower cost, which means less impact on rates. So of all the options considered, expanding to the Mid-Willamette River was actually the lower cost alternative. Excellent water quality, as proven by the long-term use of the city of Wilsonville and city of Sherwood. Ownership. Going to the Willamette River enabled TVWD to own its drinking water supply. It's a reliable supply, again, as proven by what's been experienced at the cities of Wilsonville and Sherwood, and that's a reliable supply from a water quality standpoint. And as Tom mentioned, it's also going to be a reliable supply from a seismic resiliency standpoint, and fewer environmental impacts. In terms of looking at the environmental impacts associated with implementing any of these supplies, going to the Willamette River was actually the one that had the fewest environmental impacts. Next slide, please. So once the decision was made to go to the Willamette River, then we had to create what the program entailed, essentially all the different component pieces of it. And this is a very high-level summary of it. There's an existing intake to the Willamette River that supplies water to the Willamette River Water Treatment Plant. And we are currently in the process right now of modifying that intake, basically expanding it and making it more seismically resilient. We're also going to be constructing a new water treatment plant in the eastern portion of Sherwood, right up against Southwest 124th Avenue. We'll be constructing more than 30 miles of large diameter pipeline. And when I say large diameter, the largest diameter is 66 inches and the smallest diameter is about 48 inches. And then we'll also be constructing 2 water storage tanks, pretty large tanks, 15 million gallons each up on Cooper Mountain. And the total estimated cost for this whole program is about $1.3 billion. Next slide. So with spending all of that money and all of it being public funds, oversight and control of how we spend that money is critical. And the program, the Willamette Water Supply Program, employs robust processes to maximize value and control costs. And on the left-hand side here, is a high-level summary of all of those techniques that we use. One of the most important is maximizing competition on our contracts. So for all of our design contracts, all the consultants that we hire, all of the construction contracts, we try to make it so as many different firms can compete for our work as possible, because we think that's critical to make sure that we drive the costs as low as possible. And some of the techniques we use is to right size the projects to make sure that we can get as many contractors bidding on our work as possible. Outreach, making sure as many contracts as possible are aware of our work. And quality designs, to make sure that the designs that we're putting out there for the contractors to bid on are high quality, clear, unambiguous, and the contractors know what they're in for when they're building our projects. We also employ continuous value engineering through the whole design process, and also during construction. We're constantly looking for ways to get the same value, get the same results at lower cost. Commodities tracking, in terms of tracking steel prices, concrete prices, timber prices, all of these sorts of things to find out if we could take opportunities for dips in prices. rigorous change management. One of the challenges with really large programs like this, infrastructure programs, is change can often derail progress. And so we take it very carefully in terms of making any changes on the program to make sure that we stay on track and avoid distractions. Claims avoidance and management to make sure that we, again, protect ourselves from claims during construction. And overall systems and tools for proactive control of all of our spends to date. The box here on the right-hand side of this graphic is the history of our bids, the construction bids, the projects that we've put out for construction. And you can see from this table, we've had 9 projects bid, and the total for those projects is that's what's come in, from our engineers' estimates for those projects is about 153 million. And the total for the contractor's bids is about 150 million, including contingency that's held during construction. And so that means to date that our bids for our construction projects has come in $3 million below our estimates. So far so good in terms of tracking and managing control on our construction projects. Next slide, please. So what are we doing on the program? And these are some of the critical things is we're building a secure drinking water system. And what we mean by that is secure from a public health standpoint, from in terms of making the highest quality water that we can with the technologies that are available and protecting the quality of that water all the way to the connections to the distribution systems. And in terms of secure as well, is also secure from seismic effects and other natural consequences to make sure that the system will be reliable even following those sorts of events. We're preparing for the future to make sure the system is going to last a very long time and is also can be expanded in the future, and so right-sized for the time. And improving our economy. This is another thing that TVW CEO Tom Hickman mentioned about all the jobs that this work creates and will create as it continues on. Finally, water conservation will continue to be a priority. That might seem counterintuitive that an agency that's in the business of selling water would want to conserve water, but frankly, if we weren't in that business, we would have to build even a bigger program. So it's really critical that conservation is a continuous priority for us as well to make sure that we're sound use of resources that are available to us. Next slide. So regarding supporting our economy, what does that mean? Well, in graphics that I don't have here, to date we've spent about $200 million, and of that money, 95% has gone to local employees, goods, and services. So the pipeline here that you see being constructed, this is in Northwest Pipe's fabrication facility up in North Portland. So almost all of the pipe to date that we've installed on our program has come from that facility. So it's a local facility. All the contractors that we've employed to date are local contractors. Many of the consultants that we've employed to date are local consultants, all the subcontractors and so on. All of that adding up to about 95% of the spend to date is local. What do we mean by local? That's basically all of we take a radius around the program, about 50 miles, and everything in that radius is considered local. We have a couple of other metrics that we track. We track regional, which means anything that's within Washington and Oregon. And then outside of that is what else we track. But the bulk of our spend to date, thankfully, and we're proud of it so far, is that it's 95% has gone to local. Next slide. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to introduce Andre Tolman. He is our construction manager for the overall program, overseeing all of the construction work going on to date, and he will bring you up to speed with what's happening now. So take it away, Andre.
Thank you, Dave, and good afternoon to everybody. So I love talking about construction, so we'll see if we can get through this here in an efficient manner. The slide you see now shows that there are 21 construction projects in total, and when they're all complete, all of that table will be blue. As you can see by those little green check marks on the right side, 3 of the construction projects have been completed, and the ones in blue are in progress currently. So we still have a long way to go for construction. Next slide. Here are the projects that we have currently in construction. So we've got 6 projects in the construction phase right now, 2 in the Beaverton and Tigard area, 2 there in red down in Wilsonville. We've got the raw water facility down in Wilsonville and a project in South Hillsborough. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of these projects in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So first project I'll talk about is what we call the raw water facility project, known as RWF 1.0. The contractor is Kiewit Infrastructure West. It was designed by Black & Veatch consulting engineers. The total construction cost for this phase 1 project is $49 million and change. The schedule shows that it was started in June of last year and will continue through February of next year. Now, the major activities for this project include seismic soil improvements at the existing pump station, foundation piles for all of the new structures, 66-inch raw water pipeline through this site and connecting to the future raw water pipelines, as well as structural modifications to the existing pump station. I'll talk a little bit more about some of these activities in the coming slides. So next slide. All right, so we all like photos. Here's a good photo of the part of the project known as the upper site. So that site where you can see those cranes and most of that activity, that'll be a future building that houses all of the electrical and mechanical equipment needed to run the pumps, which will pump water from the Willamette River up to the treatment plant for treatment. And then on the right side of the photo, you can see 2 very large, tall, yellow drill rigs, and those are drilling shafts for a tunnel that the pipeline will go under beneath Arrowhead Creek, which is there, which could not be done with a typical open cut method. Next slide. So this photo shows what's called deep soil mixing. Now, I mentioned seismic improvements along the existing site. So on the right part of this photo, that's the Willamette River, and there's a very steep riverbank there. That building in the middle of the photo, that's the existing pump station. Now, all of the Willamette water supply pumps, which get water out of the Willamette River, will be located in that building. And below that square building is a very deep circular shaft known as a caisson, where there's a connecting pipe out into the middle of the river, and that's how the water gets to those pumps. Now, in an earthquake and a very large seismic event like a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, it's expected that this riverbank, because of the slope and the soils there, might tend to slide towards the river, and it'll destabilize all of those pumps inside there and potentially shut them down. So what's being done on this project, this deep soil mixing, that's improving all of the soil immediately adjacent to that pump station by mixing in cement into the soil so that it really limits the amount of movement that slope will have in a seismic event. Next slide. So now I'm going to move up to the next project. It's called PLM 1.1. So this is one of our pipeline projects. And it actually connects on to the end of the pipeline from the raw water facility project down in Wilsonville, just on the other side of that creek where they're tunneling. So you can see the contractor and designer information there. It's a little smaller project at $2.7 million, but it was important to get this project done in this time frame of 2019 to 2021 because the city of Wilsonville is building a road and doing some other sewer and water work in this area, and we wanted to make sure we didn't conflict with those 2 construction projects at the same time. So this project basically includes the 66-inch diameter raw water pipeline, another crossing of a creek, Coffee Lake Creek. This one was done by open cut rather than a tunnel. We had to cross below BPA power lines, high voltage power lines, had to cross below another large water line, a 63-inch water line that feeds Wilsonville and Sherwood. as well as repair some concrete road panels. So a smaller project, but had a lot of technical challenges to it. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of some of the activity on the site. Down in the foreground, you'll see that creek. That's Coffee Lake Creek. Now, during the summer, the contractor was allowed to put a small dam in there and pump the water around. Back in the summer, the water level was much lower. And so there was an in-water work window to protect aquatic life in that creek. So they actually trenched down about 20 feet below what you can see that water level there in the dry and put the 66-inch pipe underneath that creek, and then crossed that road by going halfway across and bypassing traffic, and then moving traffic back over and continuing on. So a lot of technical challenges were involved in this project. Next slide. And again, here's just an overview of that kind of 1,300 feet of pipeline. You can see it went through this nursery area and the existing roads. Those roads are used by Wilsonville Concrete and Orpac, a major building material supplier. So there was a lot of truck traffic that had to be negotiated on this project. But as of now, it's all restored and headed towards final completion here next month. Next slide. Now this project is called PLM 1.2. This was a partner project, and you can see on the top of the slide we list a partner, City of Wilsonville. So the city wanted to build out Garden Acres Road. It was a very narrow country lane, and as the city planned for more development in the area, they wanted to widen this road. So knowing that our pipeline, the very large 66-inch pipeline, had to go through this area, we partnered with the City of Wilsonville to have one construction contract where the pipeline and the road construction could be done at once. And this saved both agencies quite a bit of money doing it this way. The major activities on this project include the 66-inch raw water pipeline, another tunnel below Day Road that cannot be done open cut because of other utilities in the roadway and traffic concerns. We're actually tying into the PLM3 pipeline, which was done back from 2016 to 2018. And then what we call Schedule A road work. So all of that street work that the City of Wilsonville was having done. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of Garden Acres Road. So as you look at this photo, you'll see that light gray concrete pavement. Those are sort of the limits of the road that the city wanted to complete. And there's the area, the land that will someday be a light industrial development there in Wilsonville. And this is what's known as a half street improvement. So it'll eventually be a wider road, but for now there's 2 lanes, planter strip, sidewalk, bike lane, etc. And so this makes it quite evident why it was important to get the pipeline done before the road was built, so that we wouldn't have to come back later and tear up existing pavement. So as I mentioned, it was a good move for both agencies to save money, do it under one contract where we only had to pay one contractor and the associated overhead and disturbance to the public from that. Next slide. Now here's a photo of our 66-inch water line going in. So you can see it takes up quite a bit of room in that road, and this Garden Acres Road really was a small lane, and it's getting widened out. But the shoring and the large equipment and the depth of our pipeline is quite impressive. So it takes up quite a bit of area as it went forward. And so as the pipeline got done, the contractor came behind and started grading out and paving the road. Next slide, please. We had another partner project, this time with Washington County. As some of you know, the county is widening Roy Rogers Road. And so the idea was the same, that we would team up and do the project together to save money for both agencies. The major activities on this project were our 66-inch finished water pipeline. We have a T connection for the 48-inch future Metzger pipeline. There was a tunnel below an unnamed water body named we call Tributary 3. There's another temporary connection to the city of Tigard included in this project, as well as Schedule A, that's the county road work. Our waterline work is known as Schedule B from the contractor's perspective. So a widening of Roy Rogers Road, including a bridge widening over that tributary 3. Next slide. So we're going to look at some photos. This is an overview of Roy Rogers Road looking north. And you can see there's a lot of development happening in this area, a lot of new housing construction, and the widening of the road. Again, we're putting our pipeline in before that paving gets done. So you can see where our pipeline is going in there on the side of the road. And then eventually 2 more lanes in a bike lane will be put over the pipeline in that area. Next slide. And this is a photo of the shaft, one of the shafts for the tunnel, which went under that tributary 3. It sounds pretty insignificant, but it was a very deep valley with a creek down at the bottom. So there's really no way to do it kind of digging from the surface. So we had to do a tunnel under that creek. And so this shaft you see here is called a secant pile shaft. Essentially, the contractor drills in those little circles of concrete all the way down 60 to 70 feet. And then when they're all connected together, it forms a compression ring, making it safe to go down to the bottom and work in there. So they excavate all the soil out from inside and then put their tunneling equipment down at the bottom. And they do that on the other side so that the tunnel equipment has a place to exit. Next slide. And then moving right along to our next project, PLM 5.2. The little map graphic there shows where this is. It's on Shoals Ferry Road and Tile Flat Road, and then a little bit onto Grabhorn Road. This project is nearly complete. We're really about 99% complete on this project. As you can see, the schedule shows it ending February of 2021, next month. The major activities, again, were the pipeline, 66-inch pipeline going in for our finished water. There was another shorter tunnel below Shoals Ferry Road. There's a lot of coordination with developer projects. Again, this project had to be done in 2019 to 2021 because, as many of you know, this area here in Beaverton is within the urban growth boundary. There's a lot of future development and some current development happening there. And we had the opportunity to put in the 66-inch pipeline across some fields where there was no traffic impacts and no current development. If we were to wait a couple of years, that would have been much more difficult and much more expensive. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of one of those road crossings that we had to do on Grabhorn Road near Tile Flat Road. So again, you can see sort of the footprint we were in outside the road, kind of off to the shoulder. That allowed, for the most part, traffic to continue and while the pipeline was being constructed. But we did have to cross the road in this location. So there was a shutdown of the road, and you can see all that shoring that had to be installed. The front of the pipeline, they're digging. They're setting these 50-foot sticks of pipeline in the ground, welding them together, while the crew at the back is putting in soil, compacting it around the pipe. In lifts coming up, we're 10, 15, sometimes 18 feet deep. So we have to put that soil in lifts and compact it as they pull those shoring boxes out. So it's a lot of heavy equipment and heavy construction required for this work. Next slide. Oh, and here's one of those tunnels that I mentioned. So here's what it looks like when you look down in the bottom of a trenchless tunnel. This one was going underneath Shoals Ferry Road. It was really only about a 100-foot tunnel, but essentially they push in a steel casing and auger out all the dirt inside that casing as they push it forward. And then when it reaches the other side, they dig a shaft over there or a pit as shown here, and then push in our yellow pipe, that 66-inch pipe. They slide it inside that casing. And then they typically grout around that void, that annular space, with some grout to fill it to keep that pipe secure inside the casing. Next slide. And finally, if you look at the map here, you'll see this project is in South Hillsborough, 209th Ave and Rosedale. This project just started last year and is really kicking off now. There's about 2 miles of 66-inch finished water pipeline. We have a micro tunnel below Butternut Creek. So this is about a 600-foot long tunnel, much longer than some of the other ones. So instead of what we call a bore and jack or an auger bore, they're doing a process called micro tunneling, where they have to keep a closed face at the front of that tunnel machine, pressurized against all that soil and groundwater trying to come back into the tunnel. So it's a much different type of technology needed for this tunnel. There's also a long 30-inch pipeline that will connect into the TVWD distribution system, and a City of Hillsborough turnout where a connection will be made to the City of Hillsborough distribution system in South Hillsborough. Next slide. Here's a photo of looking south. So this is what you see here in the middle of the photo is one of the shafts for the tunnel. This is at the very early stages of getting that shaft prepared. They're again going to use the secant pile method. This is the outline of where those secant piles will be drilled. Actually, this week they started drilling these all out, and that'll take a few more weeks before they start excavating down. That's Butternut Creek. You can see running across the middle of the photo, and on the far side of those trees, that's where they already dug one of the tunnel shafts. You can see what looks like a road. That's actually just an access road that the contractor built for the pipeline installation. And so they'll use it for all their trucking and equipment as they build the pipeline. Then we'll go ahead and look at the next slide, which shows a photo from the other side of the creek looking north. So as you look north, you can see, again, an access road built by the contractor. That's sort of the future Cornelius Pass Road alignment in the South Hillsborough area. Off in the distance, you can see South Hillsborough and some steam rising there from the, looks like Intel Ronler Acres campus. Down in the front of the photo, you'll see that's drilling out one of the tunnel shafts. Next slide, please. So those are the projects that are currently in construction. Now 2021 is going to get even busier. We are bidding 9 new projects this year, all the way from Hillsborough down through Beaverton and Sherwood down to Wilsonville. So a lot of activity coming up. We bid a couple projects starting next month, and it seems like every month we're putting out a new job to bid. So the amount of construction is really ramping up, and it'll be an exciting time moving forward. So I think that's the last slide, and we'll leave it open for questions.
Great, thank you to Andre and to Dave and to Tom for the presentation today. We have received quite a number of questions. If you have questions, you can type them in. There's a little box that looks like a cartoon bubble with a question mark over it. That's what you hit to enter the questions. So we're going to kick it off here with the first one. With more people at home, why is there a drop in water sales? It would seem that consumption would stay the same or increase. And our CEO, Tom Hickman, is going to handle that one.
Thank you, Andrea, and thanks for the question. You know, what we're seeing is a large reduction really on the commercial side more than on the residential side. That's the place where we're seeing the largest reduction. We've seen some reduction on the residential, but not quite as much. But the reduction on the commercial side certainly has impacted us. And that makes sense because a lot of businesses have had to close. A lot of people, as you point out in your question, people are working from home. So those businesses aren't open and they're not using water. So that's kind of the simple answer to that question, but it's pretty layered when you start digging into the numbers.
Thanks, Tom. Second question is, will the water taste as good as the water that we'll get now? And I don't know if Joel Carey or Dave Kraska want to take this one.
So thanks, Andrea. Thanks for the question. Don't know if Joel wanted to jump in here, but so will the water taste as good as the water we get now? Yes, the water will taste excellent. The reason I can be confident in that is that the technologies that we're planning and using and treating the water are the same or similar to the technologies used for the city of Wilsonville and the city of Sherwood, and they're very happy with the quality of their water. And the industries are very happy with the quality of the water as well. Similarly, the city of Tigard just switched their water supplies from the city of Portland to the LO Tigard project, and the technologies they use for treating that water are similar to the technologies that we will employ at our water treatment plant. So the water will taste very good. It'll taste, so I think it'll have an excellent taste. It'll be more consistent. The Portland water is currently untreated, and so there might be seasonal variations in terms of the characteristics of the water, and that won't occur in this water because we'll be treating all of the water, and so there'll be a lot more consistency in the water. Now, there may also be a slightly different taste, not objectionable, but it may be a little bit different. And certainly as we make the switch and as we dial everything in, some of that may be perceptible, and we're going to be following up in the future with additional information on that. But I'm sorry for a very long-winded question or answer to a short question, but yes, the water will taste good.
Okay, thanks, Dave. The third question is, I live in Cedar Mill area, and I believe our water now comes from Portland. Will our water change to the Willamette River water with this project? And this question came in from Dean. And I think, Dave, would you also handle that one?
Yeah, glad to. I won't bother turning on the camera. So the yes, TVWD is planning a wholesale change of its primary water source from Portland to the Willamette supply, and so the plan is for the entire TVWD service area to be supplied. Currently, it's supplied by Portland Water and from the Joint Water Commission. And in the future, it will be supplied from the Joint Water Commission and the Willamette supply. And Andrea, I think we missed one question up there. There was a question about, will our water pressure be the same? Yes, it will. Since this new supply is connected into all of the same distribution system facilities, there will be no change in water pressure.
Excellent. Thanks for catching us up there. Our next question is about our audit process, and they want to know, has an independent auditor been engaged to help us make sure that the controls are in place to control the costs are efficient and effective? And our Justin Carlton from our finance department is going to handle that.
Thank you for the question. So yes, actually, we're in the process of developing a scope of work and a request for proposals on bringing in an auditor to perform a review of our program management and controls environment. So that effort is underway now, and it got delayed a little bit with the COVID issues. And so we're working with our partners on developing that procurement. And that's in addition to the regular financial audits that we're required to perform as a public entity on an annual basis.
Thank you. Our next question is about earthquakes. And the customer says, I understand our current system is not earthquake proof. Will the new system be earthquake proof? And I think, Dave, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. So the challenge in the, I don't know how serious the wording is there, but earthquake proof would connote no matter what kind of earthquake and what kind of shaking, it's not going to withstand any damage. The short story to answering that question is we could not afford such a system. And so the challenge is how do we make it as earthquake resistant as we can and still afford it? In this system, in the Willamette water supply system, we are using all of the advanced technologies that are available to us on all the latest information on all the major earthquakes that have occurred around the world, including in Japan and Indonesia and others, to make sure that we're assessing the forces that our system is going to need to withstand from a Cascadia subduction zone event and also local earthquakes. And so our system is going to be designed for all of the forces that we can quantify at this time, and be resistant to failure from those forces. So it'll be as earthquake resistant as it can be. Certainly, our level of service that we're aiming to achieve is to be able to be back up and operational within 24 hours after such an earthquake. And for that to be able to happen, pretty much everything has to hold together. And certainly we're designing the system and building it that way so that we can achieve that.
The next question is going to be for CEO Tom Hickman. Are you in discussions with West Slope Water District and what they are planning to do? Anything that you can share with us about that?
We do regularly converse with West Slope Water District about what they're doing, what their plans are, and we certainly talk to them about opportunities as well. So I believe Mike Grimm, their general manager, is looking at what options is available to them. And in the future, I think he would be the one to notify their customers and the public about what they ultimately decide to do. But yes, we converse with them regularly about opportunities and what they're doing.
Thank you. The next question is going to be about water quality. I saw a documentary regarding C8. I think it's initiated by 3M and DuPont, and how it's pretty much in every watershed and every individual. Is this true about our watershed? And I know Tom Hickman has done some work on this, and also Joel Carey, our water resources manager, is also on the call if one of you want to take this.
I'm happy to take it if that's okay. And Tom can add anything in the end too. So C8, I'm looking at the chat too. So C8 is part of the PFAS, perfluorooctanoic acid. So now you know why we say PFAS. So the answer to your question is, we have actually tested for a suite of PFAS, including that particular compound. We did this about 5 years ago, and with combination with our partnerships too. So one of those sampling points was actually on the Willamette upstream of or at the intake. At this point, there was no detections of that particular compound, so it has been tested for. It is something that we know as far as PFAS. They are quite common in the environment. It's not something that we're seeing show up in our water bodies right now in the Pacific Northwest in any great alarm. But this is probably going to jump ahead a little bit just because I think it's part of the question. I saw posted in there earlier, but I want to make sure I address this too right now, which is that we still have some of that sampling scheduled right now for the future under some federal guidance that's happening. So we will be sampling for those compounds again as part of surveillance sampling. So it is an ongoing thing that will be occurring in the future as well, just as we learn more about these particular compounds across the country.
Do you want to add anything, Tom?
Well, actually, I'd like to invite David Kraska here just to talk about the flexibility of our treatment for addressing these things.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tom. So yeah, the treatment technologies that we're employing at the water treatment plant employ what we call a multi-barrier process. So whether the constituent that we're aiming to remove from the water is biological or chemical or of a solid type or anything, there's multiple ways that the constituents can be removed. So if the compounds that Joel was just talking about, like C8 or PFOA, were to be seen at the treatment plant, there's a number of technologies at the plant that can address it. Probably the primary one, though, that would be most effective for that particular constituent is granular activated carbon. In our filters, we will have about 6 feet of GAC on top of the filters that will be used for addressing chemical constituents like PFOA. We also are planning to employ, or have the ability to employ, what are called advanced oxidation processes. So if things like this become more prevalent or more of a concern, We can use a combination of hydrogen peroxide and ozone and/or hydrogen peroxide and UV light to treat for such things. So I think we are going to be well prepared for things like PFOA.
Okay, thanks. The next question came in from Brad, and he says, I heard you say that this project will cost 1.3 billion. How many accounts or paid users are there in TVWD? And how does this cost break down, cost per user? How many years will it take to pay for the project? And again, I think Justin Carlton from our finance team is going to give some information about this.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the $1.3 billion is approximate price tag of the entire program, which benefits not just TVWD customers, but also the city of Hillsborough and the city of Beaverton, who are all partners and part of the project. So TVWD share is approximately 55% of that. The percentages kind of adjust a little bit depending on how different project scopes change over time. And then we currently have, I want to say, around 56,000 customers. In terms of the payback period, a large share of the TVWD's element is going to be financed through the federal WIFIA loan that was mentioned earlier. And that has a 30-year payback period, which starts 5 years after substantial completion of the project. So essentially a 35-year payment plan through that financing mechanism through the WIFIA program. But this is something that we've actually been planning for several years. So the financial planning effort's been underway for over 10 years now. And so this is really sort of a generational project as opposed to something just focusing on providing benefits to the existing customer base.
Thank you. Our next question came in from Dean. I appreciate TVWD's efforts to conserve water. What energy conservation measures have been designed into the new system? I don't know if that's maybe Dave or Joelle can take that, or we might need to get someone to follow up.
So, Andrea, I think I can offer an answer there. So when we talk about energy conservation, what we're talking about in the overall Willamette water supply system is we're lifting water out of the Willamette River and bringing it up to our distribution systems. And so that requires a significant amount of pumping, and then there's energy needs at the water treatment plant to make all of this happen. And so regarding pumping the water out of the river, what we focus on is what we call the friction losses or head losses in the pipelines, bringing the water to the treatment plant and then from the treatment plant to the distribution systems. And so a lot of work goes into right-sizing the pipelines to minimize the friction losses, and also look at the design of those pipelines to try to minimize where we have sharp bends in the pipelines and use more sweeping bends or 45-degree bends to minimize those head losses and try to conserve as much energy as possible. Other technologies that we're employing on the program are solar panels wherever they can be appropriately employed on the system, and also efficient building spaces. When we're looking at lighting and ventilation and heating and things of that nature, we do everything we can to make them as efficient as possible. So there's it's a multi-pronged approach in everything that we're trying to do to manage our energy use on the program, and I hope that helps answer the question.
Thanks, Dave. And again, if you have questions, you can type them into that chat box and we'll get them answered for you today or follow up with you. We have another question for Joel Carey. Do you plan to routinely test the water for PFAS?
Yeah, so kind of related to the last question. I mean, we did touch on it just a second, but to underscore it even more, I think one of the things to be clear about routinely versus test again, are we going to test again for that? As I mentioned, there is forthcoming federal guidance about some additional surveillance sampling. So we definitely plan to work through that again, and we'll be testing here in the near future. As far as a routine thing, that really depends on what we find. Oftentimes when we do sampling efforts, we want to sample for as many things as possible. We want to kind of understand the world we see. And if we find something, then we would probably continue to sample to understand what's happening. So, in full transparency, whether it's routine, that's probably something I can't answer, but all indications right now, given the fact that we've done this before, we haven't seen a large risk by any means for PFAS. You know, there's no driver right now to do this ongoing, consistent, repeated testing for everything. But we will be monitoring again to see where things look. So, and when we do that type of information, you know, we post it publicly. I just want to be clear about that too. When we did this in the last round for all of our sources, we make that available. It's published in our consumer confidence reports. So, you know, please look at those. Please look online and please reach out to us, and we'll make sure you get the data you need to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. And the next two questions are about the same topic. Why not cover the Cooper Mountain construction? And will the Cooper Mountain Reservoir project require road closures on 190th and/or Gassner Road? If so, approximately when? And I don't know if Dave or Joel or Andre can tackle this, or if we need to have Marlis follow up, because we're getting into some pretty specific details here, but those are the two questions about that project.
Yeah, I think I can take a stab. And at this, I'm sorry, Andrea, this is Dave Kraska again. I think I can take a stab at that. So why not cover the Cooper Mountain construction? So Andre did a great job of covering all of the construction that's currently active. And so right now, regarding specifically Cooper Mountain, when we talk about building the reservoirs there, we aren't yet building the reservoirs there, and we're probably about a year or so away from starting that construction. And so on Cooper Mountain, that'll be the big facility project that we'll be doing there. And then there's the pipelines connecting to that facility near the intersection of Stone Creek and Grabone Road, where we will be building our reservoirs. Our pipelines will go from Tow Flat Road up Grabone Road to that site. And then our pipelines will leave that site heading west and then up around Baker Rock and then across Farmington and then up to Rosedale. And so in terms of will Gassner or 190th need to be closed? I really don't think so. I don't think we'll be getting near there. We'll be impacting Grabone Road between Tow Flat and Stone Creek there, where we'll be installing our pipeline along there. And there may need to be periodic closures along Grabone. And we'll certainly do a lot of planning for that, a lot of announcing for that, and identify alternative routes and everything. But I think that's the major potential road closure that we'll have for that part of the work.
Okay, does anyone else want to jump in here?
Andrea, this is Carrie Pack. I just wanted to, and I don't have the specific construction information that the questioner is asking, but there are a lot of construction activities going on up there. So as the person probably is aware, that in addition to the Willamette Water Supply Program, City of Beaverton is constructing their Cooper Mountain reservoir in near that area, and all of the South Cooper Mountain and River Terrace area, private development is moving forward and things. So we completely understand your potential frustration if you don't already have it. We understand the frustration that you might be feeling. Rest assured that we do try to coordinate all of the traffic control plans with the county and the cities that are responsible for road management. So we do try to coordinate things and try to avoid disruption to the folks living in that area as much as possible.
Thank you. And another question is, considering all the agricultural runoff and pollutants that are in the Willamette River, why are we planning to drink out of the Willamette?
So, Andrea, this is Dave Kraska again. I'm assuming that this is a question to me, or I'll take a stab at answering it, and Tom or others might want to fill in as well. So, I think so. Great question, and perhaps a way to look at it is can safe potable water be provided with proper treatment from the Willamette? As proven in the city of Wilsonville and Sherwood and elsewhere, the answer is yes. And so then that speaks back to the analysis that was started back in 2011 to 2013, evaluating the various alternative supplies in terms of going to the Willamette and providing the treatment and everything needed there, and providing the infrastructure in comparison to the other alternatives. And from a multi-phase analysis, from cost, environmental impacts, public health and safety, and so on, it was determined that through that analysis that the Mid-Willamette supply was the best future source for TVWD, and Hillsborough made a similar sort of analysis and came to the same conclusion, and that's really what enabled this this partnership project. But hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. It's great when we get questions. We want to invite as many of you who can stay on to stay on. We will keep going as long as we get questions, but it is coming close to the advertised end, so we do understand if you need to depart. We will put a video of the presentation out there so you can take a look at it. So I think this one will be for Andre. I'm currently listening to the micro tunneling under Butternut Creek from my house. Can you explain how micro tunneling works?
Sure, I'll take that one. So if you live in the area of that project, what you may be hearing are the cranes and drill rigs that are being used to drill the shafts that will be used for the tunnel. So not the actual tunneling itself at this point. The tunneling will start in the second half of February sometime, once those tunnel shafts are completely excavated. So a little bit again about the micro tunneling. So as you may know, this is in the Missoula flood deposit and otherwise known as Willamette silt material. So it's a very silty material that can flow under groundwater conditions. So when you're trying to push your tunnel machine, imagine this cylinder that you're trying to ram forward through the ground. And at the front of that cylinder, it's a closed face, but it's got some teeth that spin around and excavate and sort of dig at that soil as it spins, and fluid is pumped in there, and it's turned into a slurry so that it can get pumped back to that tunnel shaft, pumped up to the surface, and then run through a dewatering and separation plant that kind of removes the fluid from the water, and then the soil can get disposed of somewhere else. And so as that's done, it's a slow process that just moves forward very slowly, but it's done in a very controlled manner so that that tunnel machine is not excavating at a rate that's too fast. There's a lot of controls. There's an entire control cabin that an operator of that tunnel machine sits in at the surface with literally dozens of sensors that they're monitoring all the time on that tunnel machine. There's also some surface monitoring points just as a double check that you're not excavating too much soil and causing settlement. So that's a very brief overview of microtunneling. And again, that'll start late February. So if you live in the area, you will hear at the surface, they'll have a crane that kind of puts down small sections of that casing pipe down into the hole. And then that separation plant will be, separating the soil from the water. So that'll continue from late February, into the early summer.
Thanks, Andre. The next two questions are about when the project is going to be completed and when water is expected to be flowing. If you want to take that one, Dave.
Thanks, Andrea. So yeah, the project, everything that we're scheduled on the program is to be completed by mid-2026. So we anticipate everything to be done by then, and the project will be completed by June of 2026, and water will be flowing through all the systems at that time.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, where are the bids posted online? And the Tualatin Valley Water District, we do our bidding through the Daily Journal of Commerce, and the Willamette Water Supply Program has theirs online, and we're going to post the link in there so you can see where they are. And the next question is, once water is online from the Willamette Water Supply, will we continue to get Joint Water Commission water, and will we still purchase water from Portland? So I think maybe Tom or Dave can tackle this one because Carrie had to leave.
Sure. So we will get our supply from the Willamette, and there will be times that we may still take water from the JWC. because it's part of our entire water portfolio. But we will also maintain some type of an emergency backup contract with Portland Water Bureau. So in the event we were to lose those two supplies, we still have a third supply to the region. But more importantly, we're also talking to Portland and all of the regional water providers how we can back each other up now. So because of the Lake Oswego project that's been completed, the Portland Water Bureau supply, now with the Willamette and the JWC, it really gives us redundancy that we've really never had in the region, that we can, in an emergency event, really ensure water continues to flow. So but we won't be regularly purchasing from Portland Water Bureau after the plant becomes operational.
Okay, the next question is the water chlorinated. So Dave, do you want to handle that about the treatment?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So the currently, just in comparison to the current situation, right now TVWD receives water from Portland and from the Joint Water Commission. The Portland water is what's called chloraminated, which is a combination of chlorine plus ammonia. The water from the Joint Water Commission is chlorinated only. It does not have the ammonia added to it. When with the Willamette water supply system, we are only going to be chlorinating the water. And so what that will provide is a consistent method of disinfection, residual disinfection of all of the water in the distribution system. So the water from the Joint Water Commission, again, is chlorinated. The Willamette water supply system water will be chlorinated, and so those will be compatible supplies.
Thanks, Dave. And the next question is also about treatment. Are there any minerals added or removed for taste?
So Dave Kraska again to answer that question. There is no so no. In terms of the way the phrasing of this question is there any really kind of a treatment parameter to fine tune the taste of the water by adding or removing minerals? The answer is no. In either course, there are some naturally occurring minerals in the water. But there's no really treatment technology aimed at reducing the quantities. Don't believe it's needed either.
Okay, great. And has the potential to offset operating costs from generating electricity by inserting generators into the pipeline been investigated? This is a question from Paul.
So Andrea, this is Dave Kraska again. I'll take that one. So as part of the earlier question that I answered about energy conservation, one of the ways you conserve energy is you use as little as possible and to design the system to do so. And so we are working in the engineering and design and construction to use only the energy necessary to get the water to where it needs to go. Now, there will be times, typically during lower flow periods, where there will be excess energy in the water as it goes from the Willamette water supply system into the distribution systems, meaning that there will be more pressure in the Willamette water supply system than is needed in the distribution system. And in those situations, at those locations, what we call turnouts, we are looking at using a technology called Pico Generation, which can be used to use some of that excess energy to generate some electricity to perform some of the electrical functions resident there at those turnouts. And so that is something that we're looking into, and we will probably implement as appropriate in our system.
If I could just add real quickly, Dave, in the current distribution system, we do have some small hydro, very similar to what Dave just explained, where we have excess pressure and we have to mechanically reduce that pressure. And when it's feasible, we actually use a small hydro at that location to dissipate that energy.
Wonderful. And the last questions we've received so far is, will the new water supply have fluoride added, and what else is being added? I think maybe Dave, would you be willing to handle that?
Sure. I think it's going to be a combination, me and Tom or others at TVWD. But regarding the Willamette water supply system, no, we will not be adding fluoride to the water at the Willamette water supply system. That will be added by TVWD at the turnouts for its supplies. Since the Willamette water supply system supplies TVWD, which implements fluoride addition, I think Beaverton does as well, but Hillsborough does not. We are providing from the Willamette water supply system, it will be provided without fluoride. As far as what else is being added to the water, basically just the residual disinfectant will remain in the water to keep the water potable throughout the distribution system, which is the residual disinfectant being chlorine. That's really the other thing that we're being added to it. Oh, probably one other thing is just hydrogen peroxide for no, not hydrogen peroxide. We'll be doing pH adjustment. So basically, to make the water stable, to control corrosion. So and then the chlorine. But in terms of what we're adding to the water, that's it.
Okay, at this point, we have no additional questions and we're ready to close. Want to thank you for attending. I don't know if Tom wants to say a few words here, but we do appreciate you staying on and interacting with us. That's the whole point, is to get your questions answered and share what's happening with your water system.
Thank you, Andrea. And I just want to thank everyone for participating, for the team sharing their knowledge and information with this. And also for our customers that have a desire to learn more about what their water rates pay for and what it goes to. So I welcome anybody wanting to learn more about this. Please feel free to reach out, ask questions. If there's additional information on other parts of the system, other investments, other things that the district is doing that you would like information on, please reach out and let us know so we could put another one of these presentations together to help get that kind of information out there. With that, I wish you all a great week and weekend. Take care.